This week on Worldview, the crackdown in the United States on students, visitors, immigrants, and illegal immigrants is beginning to test America's ties with the world. As the Trump administration rolls up the welcome mat, how will all this affect US soft power in the world? And what can countries like India do? Hello, I'm Sohasini Heather. Welcome to Worldview at The Hindu. Now, since the beginning of the US President Donald Trump's second term in office, it is clear the administration has had non-American residents on its targets. While the government has thus far not criticized these moves in New Delhi, the pattern is getting harder to ignore, and the Ministry of External Affairs has now made its first such statement this week. Listen in.
We are aware that several Indian students have received communication from the US government regarding their F1 visa status, which happens to be the student visa. We are looking into the matter. Our embassy and consulate, they are in touch with the students to provide support.
Now, of course, we had covered the mass deportations of alleged illegal immigrants who, remember, were seen handcuffed and shackled, put on military planes back to India and to other countries that they belong to. Next came the high-profile deportations of those who were accused of protesting causes deemed inimical to US foreign policy interests, particularly pro-Palestine rallies, and protesters like Ranjani Srinivasan and Badr Khan Suri, who were alleged to have been part of those protests and were faced with deportation or self-deportation. At the time, the Ministry of External Affairs had only said that all Indians in the US should follow a law. But then this month, the spotlight has really shifted to hundreds of students, more than 4,000 at present, who have received emails revoking their student visas after their names allegedly came up on government databases for being involved in what were really seen as minor infractions, traffic violations, and others. According to one survey of 327 of the revocation notices that were received, 50% were for Indian students. That's certainly a startling figure. Of course, Indian students do make up the largest group of international students in the US. Now, the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, defended the deportation notices, although he separated the political charges against protesters or alleged protesters from the legal ones, which he said came from the Department of Homeland Security. Listen in.
So we have a right to deny visas before you get here, and we have a right to revoke them if we believe that your presence in our country undermines our national interest, our national security, and our foreign policy. And that's what we intend to do. Now, listen, there are other student visas that are being canceled that have nothing to do with us, by the way. And that has to do with someone, for example, who is here on a student visa and has a DUI. And I don't know, that's not us, that's DHS. But I don't know if people realize if you commit a crime while you're in the US, that's an automatic grounds for revoking your visa. And no one was ever doing it. They weren't cross-referencing the system. Now they're starting to do that.
Well, the cases have now led to a number of Indian students approaching US courts in order to stay the deportation proceedings against them, at least until they can complete their studies, including one joint petition that was filed by the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, on behalf of 4 students this week, including one Indian, a Nepali, and 2 Chinese students, seeking to protect all students from such arbitrary action. The crackdown on students, though, is part of a larger impact that the US government's actions are having on US soft power. So let's just talk a little bit about this soft power. We speak of it in more intangible terms, but here are 5 basic impacts they're having. 1, antagonizing allies through claims on Greenland and Canada. That is changing the view of many around the world about the United States. The second, launching a global economic war with tariffs, and we've spoken about that earlier at Worldview. The third, also on Worldview, was stopping funding US development projects abroad through agencies like USAID, whose budgets were slashed as much as 83% in the past month. Fourth is, of course, immigration, the US clamping down on visa issuances, slowing naturalization processes, reviewing categories of citizenships and visas like birthright citizenship, for example. Green card holders, tourists alike, are facing issues as well when they enter the United States. And the fifth is the category we're talking about today, universities and students being targeted. This week, the Trump administration actually has said it would slash $2 billion for funding Harvard University, but other colleges are also in line unless they accept US government controls over their syllabus, their curriculum, and their admissions. This means research grants and scholarships will be curtailed. That will have an impact on Indian students. In addition, visa numbers are actually down. A simple comparison of F1 student visas issued to students in February 2025 versus February 2024. If you add up the numbers that were given in those 2 months, a year apart, to the embassy in Delhi or in consulates that the US has in Mumbai or Kolkata or Chennai or Hyderabad, there's a massive drop of 29.9%, so nearly 30%. Some have likened this larger behavior of the US to China, especially post-2010, and talk about the resultant loss in its soft power. You can read more about the idea of the US's soft power and how it's being hurt by this piece I wrote at The Hindu. Now, given the targeting of non-Americans includes large proportions of Indians, the next question really, diplomatically and otherwise, what are New Delhi's options? One is to really say nothing, raise some of these issues behind closed doors and keep negotiating informally. At present, the government says this is their strategy, whether it is for tariffs or it is about the students. The second is to offer legal support, counseling, advice for Indian students and others that are affected. And at present, you can go to the Indian Embassy's website in the US. They have some details on emergency contacts, but not much about what kind of legal help they could actually provide, if any. The third option then is the Indian government could issue travel advisories. Put up on the website that there are difficulties for those going to the US for any purpose and listing out what they can do. This is normally seen as an unfriendly act by a nation. But remember, the US and other countries frequently issue these travel advisories for visitors to different parts of India, telling them not to go to the Northeast at certain times, Assam or Kashmir at others. In the past month, in fact, countries like Canada, Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, and the UK have, for one reason or another, issued travel warnings for those going to the United States. New Delhi is yet to do so. The fourth idea is to make the welfare and safety of Indian students who have their careers and future on the line there in the US a bilateral issue for India-US talks. Speak publicly about it. Of course, this is not something New Delhi has preferred to do in the past. All eyes really are on whether the issue even comes up next week when US Vice President J.D. Vance and other senior US officials visit India. In an unlikely scenario, India could also bilaterally apply strictures on US visitors to India, suspend exchange programs reciprocally. This is again not something that's very likely right now. Fifth is the most extreme option, what's called the nuclear option, would be for India to take its concerns internationally, raise it at organizations like UNESCO, human rights agencies, or international courts. Remember, visas and immigration are the sovereign right of any country. They really can decide who they will choose to let in and who they will not allow to stay on. However, arbitrary illegal detentions, targeting of people based on ethnicity, race, or religion, all of these can be challenged internationally. So what's Worldview's take? Education has long been one of the strongest bonds between India and the US, and American universities, their campuses, have been a beacon of learning for lakhs of Indian students each year, more than 330,000 last year. The arbitrary cancellation of visa statuses of thousands of students and a large proportion of Indians amongst them cannot but hurt America's image and its soft power, and will put a strain on the government and bilateral ties. So it just can't be wished away or brushed under a carpet by diplomacy. Time for some reading recommendations. I've spoken about this one before. It's called Soft Power, The Means to Success in World Politics by Joseph Nye, who's seen as the man who actually coined the term soft power. You should also read a book called Soft Power and Great Power Competition, Shifting Sands in the Balance of Power Between the United States and China. It was written in 2023, so it's more up to date and really worth a read. Then there's another book called Soft Power, The New Great Game. This is by Robert Winder. a book I may have spoken about called Indian Genius, The Meteoric Rise of Indians in America by Meenakshi Ahmed. And remember, Meenakshi writes about the waves of Indian immigration at different times as doctors, engineers, and others. There's a book called, very academic, called US Power in International Higher Education by Jenny Lee. She's edited it. And finally, a book I have spoken about called India's Soft Power, A New Foreign Policy Strategy by Patrick Kugel. I hope you enjoy reading all of these, and do join us again here on Worldview. Please do like our YouTube channel and visit us at www.thehindu.com. From the team, thanks for watching.